Everybody, Mr. G is back with another video lesson for reading today. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to create a response that describes the logical connections in text. So this is really one of the only ways that Mr. G can really assess, other than meeting with you via Google Meet and discussing it. But regardless, these responses are great ways to practice for fourth grade, especially, where you'll see these a lot. So I want to talk about how to create a response that describes the logical connections in text in a very organized way that you can use every single time that you answer these questions during this unit. So I have it split up by sentence and what you can write in each sentence. So the first sentence that you write should identify the text structure that the author is using. Remember the three different text structures that we have. We have compare and contrast, we have sequence and order, and then we also have cause and effect. So, for example, the author uses cause and effect text structure in this text. It may be more than one. The author may use cause and effect and sequence and order. In the second sentence, you're going to identify what the author is explaining in that section. So, for example, in the response that we had to respond to the other day, in the text that we read about called My Life Hasn't Changed, the author is explaining or writing about Anne Thompson's struggles after she was paralyzed in the skiing accident. And then the third sentence should use specific evidence from the text to support your answer that explains what the author is using as far as text structures go. So, for example, you'd say something like, I know the author is using sequence and order because in the text, she is explaining the order that the accident affected her and then how she recovered step by step. First, she got hurt. Then she was paralyzed from the waist down. After that, she became a wheelchair athlete. And then following that, finally, she was an Olympian, right? So that's just an example right there. And make sure that you're using specific evidence from the text. I know this because in the text, it says blank. And then your fourth sentence should tie in your initial claim. So this text evidence proves the author is using a compare and contrast text structure, or a cause and effect text structure, or a sequence and order text structure, because I can see that the author is explaining the order that things happened to Anne Thompson in, or I can see the cause was that Anne Thompson got hurt and the effect was she became a great wheelchair athlete. So in this next section, I'm going to actually show you a response that's color-coded that can help you see each of these sentences and help you formulate your response. It's going to be due tomorrow. So here's how we use the text to formulate our response to our question. So let's take a look at the first question right here. The question was, read from My Life Hasn't Changed to I Never Missed a Beat. Describe how the ideas in the two sections are connected. Does the author use comparison, cause and effect, or sequence and order in this section of text? Use information from the text to support your response. So in this section of text that we are reading right here, My Life Hasn't Changed, we're going to read from this part to the end of I Never Missed a Beat. The first time we read it. The second time we look closely for little keywords. And I do see a couple keywords right here that are going to tip me off what text structure the author is using. First one I see right here is on a cold morning in Austria. So on a cold morning is talking about the time of day that it is. So the author is probably using something like sequence and order in this section. Let's keep reading. At the time, Thompson was one of the United States' top junior skiers. She hoped to win an Olympic gold medal. As she prepared for that race, she couldn't know that it would be the last one she'd ever take. And then it continues to talk about the events that happen in order. She fell, she severed her spinal cord, and it took place 15 years ago. And then it even says later on, after her accident, Thompson joined the Cruisers, a program for wheelchair athletes in Connecticut, Thompson's home state. So we can see that the author is using sequence and order here because they're talking about the events that happened from the time of her accident to the time after her accident. So I'm going to make sure I include that in my response. Also, I do see that there's this keyword right here. It says, as a result of the accident, Thompson could no longer walk. Her skiing career was over. but her life as an athlete was not. When we look at these keywords right here, as a result is a keyword for cause and effect because it's talking about the result of a cause. The cause was she fell, and as a result, she couldn't walk, but her life as an athlete was not over. So what I'm going to do is include that in my response. And here is the sample response here for you guys. So let's take a look at this. The first sentence should identify the text structure. So as you can see, I wrote here, hang on. Let me figure out a way to make this visible. All right, so the first sentence, identify the text structure. Does the author use comparison, cause and effect, or sequence and order in this section of text? The author is using a cause and effect text structure as well as sequence and order in this text. So I've identified the two different types of text structures that the author is using, sequence and order and cause and effect. That's my first sentence. The second sentence, what is the author specifically explaining? So we're talking about the text structure. That is something that we'll see in every informative text, but every informative text is different. So now we're going to talk about what specifically the author is talking about in this text. The author uses those text structures because the author is explaining the order that events took place before, during, and after Anne's skiing accident, and the author is also explaining what happened as a result of her accident. In my next sentences, I'm using specific evidence to support my answer. So I need to find evidence in the text that proves that cause and effect and sequence and order are the text structures being used. I know the author is using sequence and order because in the text it says keywords like at the time, Thompson was one of the United States top junior skiers, and then it even says after her accident, Thompson joined the Cruisers, which shows the order that events happened in Anne's life before and after the accident. I also know the author is using cause and effect because the author says as a result of her accident, Thompson could no longer walk. This shows the cause, which was the accident, and the effect, which was that Anne couldn't walk, even though she eventually became a wheelchair athlete. And then in my final sentence, I tie it into my initial claim. This text evidence proves that the author is using a cause and effect text structure as well as sequence and order to organize their information. So that's a sample response. I'm going to put this in Google Classroom so you can look at it. But all of your responses should be around 4 to 6 sentences by the time that you have your identification of the text structure, talk about what the author is specifically referring to, and then use your evidence and then a wrap-up sentence, your final sentence that ties into your initial claim. So hopefully you guys found that video helpful and you use this for tomorrow's reading lesson.